southwest. Temperatures for many won't be quite as low as they were last night, but nonetheless it could be a bit chilly, a touch of frost in some rural spots where we get any clear skies. Starting off tomorrow morning on a pretty damp note across much of northern and eastern Scotland. The rain's going to be a bit persistent at times, but not especially heavy, but we could see some further snow building up over the hills and mountains. Drier and brighter across western and southern parts of Scotland and towards the northeast of Northern Ireland, but some rain coming in from the south. And whilst across much of England and Wales it's going to be a largely dry start, it could also be quite cloudy, quite murky because of that mist and fog that's developing overnight. Then as we go through the day, not a huge amount changes for many. Lots of places staying largely dry but quite cloudy and murky. Further rain towards the far northeast of the UK, but it's in the southwest where we have rain pushing its way in, and this could be quite persistent, could be quite heavy, could cause some further flooding issues. Temperatures, well, similar to today really, around average for the time of year. More wet weather to come as we go through Friday. That band of rain pushes its way northeastwards. Likely to see some impacts from the wet weather across Northern Ireland with some further flooding here and elsewhere. As that rain pushes its way further northwards, we could see some further hill snow as there's colder air across northern parts in particular. More changeable weather to come as we go through this weekend with some dry but bright weather at times, also a bit of rain.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can become our biggest cash prize winner to date, as there's a simply stunning £85,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Go on that dream holiday, buy that brand new car, or just relax in the knowledge that the rest of the year could be on us. But you have to hurry, as lines close on Friday the 30th of January. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
We will stop this. We will smash the gangs.
I will do whatever it takes to secure our borders.
Reverend Starmer's doomed one-in, one-out deal with France has failed again, as it's revealed 69 more migrants have arrived than have been returned, in addition to the 10,000 illegal boat arrivals since its inception 5 months ago. When will Labour admit the scheme has failed and that the only way to solve the migrant crisis is to leave the autocratic ECHR? Also tonight.
China, 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 China.
China. I can't do as well as the Trumpster. The Prime Minister has arrived in China on a trade mission with businessmen and advisors, all of whom have been given burner phones over fears that the communist authorities will spy on them. Why is the Prime Minister appeasing a nation that poses a national security threat of this magnitude? Plus,
in Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
American officials have warned that Britain's online censorship is set to become as bad as Iran's, as the government hints at plans to ban virtual private networks, VPNs, which protect IP addresses and other data. But their explosion since the passing of the Online Safety Act has led the state to want to control your online activity even further. Are the Americans right? And the war on the motorist reaches the A-list, this time on a scooter. The actor and activist Idris Elba was fined nearly £200 for doing a practically supersonic 28 miles per hour on a moped. Will the blob not rest until we all revert to crawling on all fours? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most preternaturally perspicacious panel, the head of policy at Reform, Zia Youssef, and the political consultant and former Labour candidate, Kevin Craig. As always, let me know what you think. Mailmog at GBNews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day. It's the News Bulletin with the sesquipedalian Sam Francis.
Sesquipedalian. Yes, got it right. Took me enough practice. Anyway, the top story just after 8 o'clock. President Donald Trump has issued one of his starkest warnings yet to Iran, saying time is running out for Tehran to agree to a nuclear deal. In a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump said a massive armada of US warships is moving towards the region, describing the fleet as ready with speed and violence if necessary. He warned Iran to come to the table and accept a deal that guarantees it will not develop nuclear weapons, suggesting the next US move could be far more severe if talks fail. Well, in the last hour or so, Iran has now issued its own sharp warning. The country's foreign minister saying on social media that Iran's armed forces have their fingers on the trigger, ready to respond immediately and powerfully to any US aggression. Here, Sir Keir Starmer is, he has already made history, he says, as he has begun the first visit to China by a British Prime Minister in 8 years. Addressing a delegation of more than 50 British business and cultural leaders, the Prime Minister said the trip marks a reset in relations, moving away from what he called years of drifting between a golden age and an ice age with Beijing. Sir Keir Starmer says the government wants a more consistent and hard-headed approach, engaging for Britain's national interest, but still raising areas of disagreement. He's due to meet President Xi Jinping tomorrow, with trade, investment and long-term economic ties high on the agenda, alongside security and human rights. Well, in Sir Keir Starmer's absence, a heated clash at Deputy Prime Minister's questions today as Labour came under pressure over who really benefits from its pub tax break. The row follows the government's decision to give pubs and live music venues 15% off business rates. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith challenged David Lammy, claiming more than 90% of hospitality businesses get nothing from the government's plan.
If the party opposite knew anything about business, they would know this is too little too late. Our high streets, their high streets, are bleeding out.
Well, David Lammy hit back, pointing to the Conservatives' record and insisting Labour, he said, is acting to keep pubs and music venues alive after years of closures.
All of us want to see our pubs in good health and to support hospitality. That's why the Chancellor announced a £4 billion package of support. I must say that contrasts with the party opposite, who of course saw 7,000 pubs close under their watch.
Kemi Badenoch has launched a fresh attack today on both Labour and Reform UK, accusing them of being, in her words, drama queens. In a speech to party members, the Conservative leader said she's focused on rebuilding, not blowing up the Tory party, taking a direct swipe at Nigel Farage along the way. She told supporters she wasn't elected to dismantle the Conservatives, just so, quote, Nigel Farage can finally have a go, and insisted voters want seriousness, not spectacle.
What we need are people who are going to help get Britain working again. And that means we have to be a truly Conservative party. So I won't apologise to those walking away because they don't like the new direction. We only want Conservatives. But to those who are defecting, who don't actually disagree with our policies, I will say, I'm sorry you didn't win the leadership contest. I'm sorry you didn't get a job in the shadow cabinet. I'm sorry you didn't get into the Lords, but you are not offering a plan to fix this country. This is a tantrum dressed up as politics.
And history has been made at the Church of England. Dame Sarah Mullally has been formally sworn in today as Archbishop of Canterbury. She's the first woman to lead the church in its 500-year history. She was confirmed at a ceremony at St Paul's Cathedral today after nearly a decade as a Bishop of London and a career that began far from the pulpit as England's chief nursing officer. She takes over from Justin Welby, of course, who stepped down following serious failings over safeguarding. Well, Jacob, I have just been frantically Googling a word to throw back at you. It's drawn a blank, so I'll just say back to you.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. 5 months ago, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and the French President, Emmanuel Macron, promised a solution to the migrant crisis.
This is our plan together. Hard-headed, aggressive action on all fronts to break the gang's business model, secure our borders, and show that by attempting to reach the UK by small boat will only end in failure, detention and return.
The scheme was doomed to fail from the start, and today we learn of its latest failure. Since the scheme began, more illegal migrants have arrived than have been removed under it. 350 have arrived and 281 have been deported. Since the botched deal came into force in mid-September, more than 10,000 migrants have crossed in small boats. Ministers will tell you that it's early days, that we need to give the scheme time, that it's in its pilot phase, piloting across the channel, I should think.
Had 350 people come into the country from France and 281 have been removed.
2025, 41,472 people crossed the English Channel, and you're talking about the low hundreds. This is a disaster.
No, I think there was always a pilot, and it was designed to try to prove that this new model of working with the French could work.
It has to be said, Nick Ferrari is a brilliant interviewer. Anyway, the deal is not working. Even the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has admitted there's a problem. Not enough people in France want to use the legal route. And why would they, when the chances of staying in Britain after arriving illegally are so high? We also know that some migrants sent back to France under the scheme have returned on small boats within weeks. The government promised a deterrent, but there is no deterrent. Migrants are returning. The 4-star accommodation and freebies remain, and the government's failing to do anything about it. France says the scheme would only return about 50 people a week anyway, which is meaningless when thousands are crossing every month and at odds with what we're hearing from ministers in Britain. So why are both nations failing to solve the problem? Well, it's the European Convention on Human Rights. Whilst we remain under the yoke of the ECHR, everything is judged by the courts, decided and blocked by lefty lawyers. As long as we stay in it, illegal migrants know they can come here illegally, apply for asylum, delay removal for reasons as absurd as chicken nuggets, and then they get allowed to stay. This gives the incentive, the pull factor, so the boats keep coming. The criminal gangs that the Reverend Starmer promised to smash keep making money and advertising the crossings. They just aren't willing to take the tough decisions, the decisive action that is needed to stop this, because it goes against what they think is higher law and a higher interest than that of the British people and law passed in Parliament, and that is their international obligations, which they have placed above their duty to the British people. Instead, they give millions of pounds to the French for a deal that has failed. So we have to leave the ECHR. It's not a panacea, but it allows us then to choose the policies for ourselves, make policies ourselves that would deal with this problem. Until we've left, nothing will change. As always, let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now I'm joined by my most preternaturally perspicacious panel, Reform Zia Youssef and Labour's Kevin Craig. Kevin, this scheme's a washout, isn't it?
Oh, the Home Secretary said it is early days. It is a pilot. Your reading of it is obviously very, very negative. The Home Secretary and the government are very honest that the number of people crossing in small boats is still far too high. But what you didn't mention, if you want big numbers, is over 20,000 crossings have been thwarted by our cooperation with France. There's been an increase of up to a third in the amount of goods being seized from criminals. And this pilot, hang on, Jacob, this pilot is just the start. The government's introduced the strongest ever reform of asylum, and it can't happen quickly enough, but it's being done also in a way that offers safe routes with humanity, which is the main difference between Labour and Reform, or the Tories, because they now have adopted the leading candidates from Tory governments, Jenrick and Braverman, people that my fellow guest here tonight said were the worst kinds of insidious politicians. The Tories that created this mess are now in Reform, and I'm very confused by that.
So two thoughts on that. One is that if it's a pilot, you can say it hasn't worked with no loss of face. You tried, you failed. Doesn't it make sense to admit that?
It's the start.
And the second is that although they may have stopped 20,000, more people have come in than ever before. So you're getting record numbers coming. They're just not catching up with the problem.
And I'm not. I said that explicitly, that for this government, it hears the British people. It hears that they're unhappy with the level of small boat crossings. But we are a year and a half into fixing a 14-year Tory mess on this. And the leading architects of this situation are now in Reform. The same people who don't think the government's doing a good job.
Is that a problem for you that you've taken on the people who were in charge when we made a hash of it?
Jacob, let's focus on the issue, which is that the United Kingdom is currently being invaded. It has been invaded for years now. More people have turned up on the beaches of the United Kingdom uninvited than turned up on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, right? And you look at the numbers now, well north of 40,000 last year. And this one-in, one-out programme, which when it was first announced was already a farce, because there's clearly well over 1 million illegal migrants already in the UK who need to be deported if you're actually going to uphold the law, which is what Reform want to do. But let me just finish the point, Jacob. We are in a position where 350 people have come in from France, only 281 have gone out, which, if you take the 700 million quid that British taxpayers have paid, people watching your programme right now have paid, 2.4 million quid per migrant leaving is an absolute disgrace. And that is what is so sickening about this. The British people are being humiliated time and time again, and that is why Reform have led 200 polls in a row.
OK, and do you agree that the problem is not solved on its own by leaving the ECHR, but that is a condition precedent, and that also the small boat's an important problem, but there's a huge underreported problem of overstayers on visas, which nobody really has been talking about.
Of course, it's all of those things, right? So, yeah, let's go through those. Number one, I'll say it time and time again, leaving the ECHR is an absolutely necessary, albeit insufficient, precondition to actually having a secure border. And by the way, Jacob, you don't have an immigration policy if you don't have a secure border. It's like saying I'm going to have a dinner party on Saturday night and leaving all the gates open and the doors unlocked. Your invitation list is irrelevant, right? So that's number one. And we are being, as British people, we're being ritually humiliated on the world stage year after year after year, right? That's number one. Number two, yes, of course, if you look at the people coming in, so let's look at, for example, Pakistani migrants who have come in, just to name one. They don't even appear in the top 20 in terms of nationalities coming here by small boat. But they do appear on the overstayers list. They're very high up on that, primarily through the student visa program, Jacob, which, as you know, has basically become, sadly, large parts of the student visa program have become a scam, right, on the British people. And I'm afraid I'm going to call it a scam because that's what it is. And that's what we've got to address. And Reform already talked about this, right? We've already talked about, of course, we need a secure border so we can't have any more illegal immigration. We can't also have an insane number of people coming here legally, overstaying and then seeking asylum after saying they were going to come here and study something.
I agree with everything that you've said, which won't surprise you. But if Reform were to win an election, will the British people put up with the level of deportations that is necessary? If you look what's going on in Minneapolis, the Americans want their borders controlled, but they don't actually like the necessary means to do it in the end. You get a lot of dissatisfaction. How does reform deport people whilst maintaining popular support?
Look, Britain clearly needs mass deportations, right? And we are making the case, and that's why we're doing it already, years before a general election, Jacob. We are making the case that mass deportations are necessary because this is a country of laws. This is a great country. And by the way, I hear this from legal migrants as much as anyone else about how important it is that people must be able to pay their way. This is our ask, Jacob. Migrants in this country must be able to pay their way, more than pay their way, speak English, and not commit crime. And with regards to the comparison with ICE in America, look, I've spoken to law enforcement officers in America, and I don't envy them having to do that job, especially in places where many people are carrying firearms, which is clearly not the case. I know we have something of a problem there, but nowhere near the same problem. But let me be clear, the real answer to that is in the British people. All we can do is make the case to the British people that we need to uphold the law. I think it will be more straightforward for us, not completely straightforward. There will be challenges, of course. Nothing worth doing in life is straightforward and easy, Jacob. But the fact that we don't have quite the same, well, anywhere near, frankly, the same firearm carrying in this country, I think will make it more straightforward.
Kevin, does the Labour government want to remove people who are here illegally, or does it actually take the view that people who've been here for years and years are never going to be removed?
No, Labour is very serious about removing people who shouldn't be here. But the big difference philosophically between Labour and Reform is the amount of humanity or empathy that the Labour government feels towards some of these people. And that is often missing in language from Reform spokespeople.
Well, with respect,
I didn't interrupt you.
We have empathy and sympathy for the British people.
I'm not taking any interruptions tonight from you who is sitting there having taken on board people that you call the most insidious. Yeah, but I'm not taking any interruptions. So basically, the Labour government is making slow, steady progress in cleaning up this mess. I always say it's not quick enough for people, but you also hear the difference philosophically is that migration has historically offered benefits to this country. Our NHS is built on the service of people from overseas. Our roads, our motorways, public housing was built. That's the big difference. Specifically, of course, this Home Secretary has had flack from the far left, the Greens and others, for her reform, or the biggest reform of asylum policy ever. And I'm looking forward to 3.5 years of constructive debate with Reform so that those two visions can be put to the British people.
All right. Well, we look forward to 2029. Thanks to my panel. Coming up in a moment.
China. 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 China.
I've got to practice saying that more in front of the mirror because I can't quite get it quite right. But the Prime Minister arrived in China on a trade mission with businessmen and advisors, all of whom have been given burner phones over fears that the communist authorities will spy on them. Why is the Prime Minister appeasing a nation that poses such a national security threat to this country?
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Yeah, that tea party taking place a little bit later on today. But before all of that, we are here on Pooh Bridge for an extra special game of Pooh Sticks. I've got some sticks here from the 100-acre wood that we're going to be using. There's a whole host of people here who have wanted to play Pooh Sticks with me. Lily and Anya have also been collecting sticks today. They're a big fan of Winnie the Pooh. Anya, what's Lily's favourite character?
It is Winnie the Pooh.
And what is it about Winnie the Pooh that's so popular, not only from people like you growing up, but also Lily now?
Well, we love all the stories and how there is a message from each of the stories as well. We read them every night. And what do you love about Winnie the Pooh as well? Honey, don't you? The little honey pots.
Amazing. Well, you get your sticks ready. We've also got a running group who have come here especially today to mark 100 years of Winnie the Pooh from Haywards Heath. They have all come prepared with their sticks. Some have even brought sticks from home. Sticks are at the ready. You've brought your sticks from home. What's your technique?
Well, mine are actually probably quite wet, which I've heard is not a good thing. I think they need to be a bit drier.
In 3, 2, 1, go. All right, the sticks are in the water, but who is going to win here at Pooh Sticks Bridge? Oh, it wasn't me. There's the first stick to come through. Whose was that? Becky, you are the winner. Congratulations of Pooh Sticks on Pooh Sticks Bridge. But this is just the first round. They've got a whole clipboard here. There's 30 of them come for a whole tournament here today to play Pooh Sticks on what is Winnie the Pooh Day, marking 100 years since Winnie the Pooh was first published back in Christmas Eve of 1925. And this, of course, Winnie the Pooh Day being marked today on the birthday of A.A. Milne.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, we were talking about migration, and the male mogs have come in on small boats, I think. Benny says, no gang smash, no boat stopped, and this fig leaf of propriety well and truly shredded. They've done nothing except block, delay and mutter about reviews and process. All the while, numbers tick up, both population and taxpayer cost. Frank says, what a great deal with the French. Can't wait and see what the Prime Minister ends up negotiating in China to give away next. And Jane says, I'm all for taking genuine asylum seekers, such as Afghan women, but Labour are the worst negotiators in history. The French must have been laughing at their naivety and stupidity. Well, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has arrived in China on a trade mission, and the security fears are such that everyone on the delegation, including businessmen, advisors and journalists, has been issued burner phones, which are things normally used by criminals and drug dealers, temporary SIM cards and throwaway laptops. I didn't even get throwaway laptops. Attendees have been told to assume they're being watched, photographed, possibly even bugged, simply by plugging a device into a wall socket. The warning comes after previous British visits where Chinese officials were caught taking photographs inside a UK government aircraft, and amid claims China has been spying on British officials for years. So why is the Prime Minister kowtowing to a regime that poses a national security risk that is too severe to use his own telephone? Well, I'm joined now by the former MP and British Army Captain Bob Seeley. Bob, thank you very much for joining me. If you can't trust a country not to spy on you when you're a visitor and you have to take criminal telephones, effectively, why on earth are you going? We have unfortunately lost Bob Seeley, so Kevin, I'm going to let you defend the kowtow.
What are you talking about? The kowtow, right? China is responsible for almost 400,000 jobs in this country. It's a major international world power, and we have to engage with it constructively. And as for the idea that it's a kowtow, we all know that major nations all spy on each other. It happens across the world, OK?
Not to this extent. Not to the extent that Theresa May, when she last Prime Minister to go, was told to get undressed in the dark, so they might be taking pictures of her. And what sort of a government is that?
It happens across the world in the modern age. And I think with your government experience, you know this, actually. I think you're being slightly provocative. And if you look at the other leading countries whose leaders... go on. The other countries' leaders who visited China, we are well behind. And it's imperative. And I don't understand this faux outrage that's coming from the Conservatives and Reform, who are the real danger to national security, by the way, with their policy towards Russia and their absolute bending over for Donald Trump. Keir Starmer is
bending
reasonable.
Over to Donald Trump.
They are.
To Keir Starmer?
On Greenland. Hello, Donald, where would you like to take it? The island, as it were. And I think on China, Keir Starmer is ploughing a very difficult middle line because there's jobs and investment at stake.
What about Jimmy Lai, British citizen, in prison, breaking the joint declaration against international law?
OK, but we, compared to China, we have to be realistic about our power, and that case is being raised by the Prime Minister.
So it's all marvellous, and you're a greater risk to national security.
Well, look, Keir Starmer has been relentlessly capitulating to China. That is what this Labour government has done. And let's go through the number of things. You mentioned a bunch of islands. Let's talk about the Chagos Islands, which Keir Starmer seems desperate, absolutely desperate to cede British sovereign territory, British sovereign territory, and then pay billions of pounds of British taxpayers' money to try to lease it back. Then let's talk about the embassy. I mean, we're in this insane situation where Starmer is wanting to take burner phones, as you said, to China because he's worried about espionage. Quite rightly, because China is well known for having pretty much thermonuclear industrial capabilities in terms of international diplomatic espionage. So that's fair enough. So why then is he authorising an embassy to sit right atop, right by the Tower of London, right atop fibre optic cables, some of our most important communications capabilities, which even MI5 are worried about? Let's talk about Peter Mandelson's lobbying firm, by the way, which has taken $3 million from literally from the Chinese military, right? So there are so many examples of where Labour has, I mean, use the word kowtow, I'd use the word capitulation. The last point I want to make is there was a Labour MP, Barry Gardiner, who accepted hundreds of thousands of pounds of donations into his parliamentary office, right? And from somebody who MI5, British Security Services, later identified as a Chinese asset. So there is a whole ton of questions to answer there, and I'm afraid we've never had the answers.
Right. You can have a very brief response to that before I go to Bob Seeley.
Well, just on the embassy, it's been approved by the security services, and the reality is that all major powers all benefit from the same technology, and everyone is spying on each other.
And Barry Gardiner?
Barry Gardiner, I don't know the details of the case. Christine, somebody it was, but I would take it more seriously.
Barry Gardiner denies any wrongdoing,
right? And I would take it more seriously if reform people hadn't been convicted of taking Russian money, and if Nigel Farage hadn't said that Ukraine was started because of overreach by the UK and its Western allies.
But I think we are now joined by Bob Seeley. Bob, thank you very much for joining me. You've been making the case against China for a long time. What are your big concerns at the moment?
Okay, I think primarily we are effectively kowtowing, as he says, simply because we believe there is a glorious economic El Dorado at the end of this rainbow. Sorry to mix my metaphors. There really isn't. China doesn't want to trade with us. It wants to economically dominate, and thus by separating European states from the United States. So the more we accept economic domination, supply chain domination, net zero madness domination by supplying all our solar power, we will simply become too weak and too supplicant in order to say no to the Chinese when they try to suffocate Taiwan or when there is a violent Pacific outburst or a military conflict with the United States. That is the fundamental problem.
And we've seen,
the way to deal with it is not to pick a yeah.
So I was going to ask you about the rare earth metals, because we've seen China use its economic dominance to make the West go along with what it wants. That it's not a theoretical policy proposition, it's something that has actually already happened.
Again, Jacob, you're spot on. One of the things that I was proud of in the last Parliament was getting Huawei out of the 5G network, because it was a perfect example of the way China wanted to use economic and technical dominance to dominate the UK. The answer to all this is not to start waving a finger or picking a needless argument with the Chinese, but is actually to defend ourselves much better. We need to understand our supply chain dominance. We need to understand military and non-military threats to the UK, and we need to be much better at explaining that to the British people and weaning ourselves off supply chain and other forms of Chinese dominance, so we can better retain freedom of action, both for ourselves and to set an example to our European and global partners.
Bob, thank you very much. The line hasn't been great, but I think the points have really hit home. And I want to ask Kevin about it, that this is the worry that the economic dominance of China will be misused by them, as they've already shown us.
But they've always been like that, and nobody is talking. Bob there didn't mention the fact, look at Brompton's Bikes, okay, a really successful British company. 5 years ago, didn't have anything in China. They set up one shop there, and now it's their largest export market. That's real British jobs, real GDP.
Yep.
So that's why the Prime Minister is taking a pragmatic approach to dealing with China.
It's actually our dependence on China for things like rare earth metals, potentially for computer chips, that means that they can have control. And the threat of kill switches in electric cars, which they're selling very cheaply, that they get into our infrastructure and they're not a friend. That's the point.
But nobody thinks they're a friend. No, none of the major parties in British public life think that the Chinese are a friend of this country and its strategic military interests. But what would you have Britain do overnight, right now? There's the middle way is what Starmer is doing.
How about not giving them a super embassy right over critical communications infrastructure?
Do you want me to answer that?
Let's be a start, yeah.
Because that's a way of attacking the government, which is your job to do. But the fact is, it's just a different embassy in a different location, which has been signed off, analysed. All the underground cables have been assessed by the security services, and they've given it approval. The Prime Minister wouldn't have done it without the Secret Services saying that they approved it. Now, if you take that decision to refuse the Chinese, they've still got an embassy, and with modern technology, I mean, I just think, and to go to the Tories...
This is the biggest embassy this country has ever seen.
Yes.
It is a mammoth of a building, and MI5 themselves, our security services, have said publicly that that they cannot guarantee that every threat can be secured from such an embassy. And look, again, the fact that the Prime Minister wants to take burner phones, again, that's how insane this situation is. The Prime Minister is taking burner phones to China because he's so worried about corporate espionage. You just gave the anecdote about Theresa May, which is extremely disturbing. I've heard many such anecdotes from people who served in government historically. Everybody understands the threat that China poses from an espionage perspective. So I go back to the point, you ask, what can a government do? Sure, let's trade with China. Nobody's arguing we shouldn't trade with China. Why is the British government, why is Keir Starmer giving China a super embassy of the size of which this country has never seen over such critical infrastructure?
But the size of a building is not going to change ultimately whether or not China is effective in undertaking representing its own interest. The size of a building is a very useful vehicle for Reform and Tories to attack Labour, and I understand that. But they already have a major embassy in the UK. They have technology that's world-leading. And the hypocrisy, most of all here, is the Conservative Party, who were so close to China, particularly under Cameron Osborne, which you remember.
Oh, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend that. So thank you very much to my panel. In a moment.
In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
American officials have warned that Britain's online censorship is set to become as bad as Iran's as the government hints at plans to ban virtual private networks. Their explosion since the passing of the Online Safety Act has led the state to want to control your online activity even more. Are the Americans right?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
It's been very unsettled across southern Europe so far this week, and there is more heavy, thundery rain to come, even some significant hill snow through the next few days. Tomorrow is going to be very wet across much of Spain, Portugal, and also North Morocco. Several hundred millimetres of rain building up through this week, and it's also very unsettled further east across the Mediterranean. Strong winds leading to large waves, and also some heavy, thundery rain. More changeable weather to come into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
Good evening. I'm back with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, there's going to be some persistent rain pushing into the southwest again later tomorrow. But before all that, there's some mist, some fog, some murkiness to watch out for tonight. That's because there's a bit of a slack flow across the country. That slack flow leading to light winds, allowing for cloud to develop and then lower, bringing some mist, some fog and some murkiness for many places, particularly through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Towards the far northeast of the country, eastern Scotland in particular, quite wet here, some persistent rain, even some hill snow and showery outbreaks of rain towards the southwest. Temperatures for many won't be quite as low as they were last night, but nonetheless it could be a bit chilly, a touch of frost in some rural spots where we get any clear skies. Starting off tomorrow morning on a pretty damp note across much of northern and eastern Scotland. The rain's going to be a bit persistent at times, but not especially heavy, but we could see some further snow building up over the hills and mountains. Drier and brighter brighter across western and southern parts of Scotland and towards the northeast of Northern Ireland, but some rain coming in from the south. And whilst across much of England and Wales it's going to be a largely dry start, it could also be quite cloudy, quite murky because of that mist and fog that's developing overnight. Then as we go through the day, not a huge amount changes for many. Lots of places staying largely dry but quite cloudy and murky. Further rain towards the far northeast of the UK, but it's in the southwest where we have rain pushing its way in, and this could be quite persistent, could be quite heavy, could cause some further flooding issues. Temperatures, well, similar to today really, around average for the time of year. More wet weather to come as we go through Friday. That band of rain pushes its way northeastwards, likely to see some impacts from the wet weather across Northern Ireland with some further flooding here and elsewhere. As that rain pushes its way further northwards, we could see some further hill snow as there's colder air across northern parts in particular. More changeable weather to come as we go through this weekend with some dry but bright weather at times, also a bit of rain.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
American officials are warning that Britain's online censorship is becoming as bad as Iran's. After the government passed the Online Safety Act, the use of VPNs surged, but now ministers are considering banning them. Of course they are. Washington officials have responded by warning that blocking private internet access is the first step towards state-controlled censorship akin to China and Iran. So are the Americans right that Keir Starmer is tightening control of the internet in the name of safety at the cost of free speech? Or is it necessary to protect children from harm? Well, I'm joined now by the columnist at the Washington Examiner, Tiana Low-Dasher. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Is this hyperbole that Iranian control is pretty tight and they massacre people who use the internet illegally? So it's not quite that bad in England, is it?
Perhaps not figuratively, but literally, Iran does not outright ban VPN. So if you're getting incredibly technical, the UK would join, 4 nations, North Korea being one of them, as far as an outright VPN ban goes. I think as far as why U.S. officials, why our diplomats are so concerned, beyond just the special relationship and affection that we have for our older sibling, the UK, is the fact that clearly this is just part of a longer pattern of the Labour government under Keir Starmer wanting to make sure that there are no workarounds for internet anonymity. You have other countries, you even have jurisdictions in the US where you have individual states that mandate age verification, specifically very narrowly tailored for instance, websites with hardcore pornography. And there has not been the same overreach. Even in Australia, where there has been the crackdown on minors on social media, it hasn't been the same overreach, because the whole point of the Online Safety Act, if you look definitionally at what constitutes harmful content, it is supposed to be sweeping and broad and ensure that the state does have total control.
And it gives that power to Ofcom to try and decide things without having legislated in detail. And therefore, you're very much in the hands of arbitrary lawmaking rather than a clearly thought through proposal that just protects children. And when you do protect children, you don't want to impinge on adult freedom.
Absolutely. And again, when the definitions of what constitutes harm are very narrow, the UK obviously doesn't have a First Amendment the same way the US does. You are a separate country. You have certain prerogatives. But then when you go through the minutia of bans on bullying content or content which incites hatred against people who have the characteristic of gender reassignment, everyone sees the direction that the UK is going. And, for all the figurative harm that the UK is interested in policing, it looks as though arrests for speech-related offenses have tripled in the last decade. Very little attention has been paid to by the Labour government to the actual physical harm of children. I mean, the statistics seem to indicate that the UK has the highest rate of rape of any other European nation. Focusing on the digital harm seems a little less an efficient use of time than the actual physical vulnerabilities.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You put the case extremely well. Now, I've been to Kevin twice so far to begin with, so I better come to you.
Yeah.
The Online Safety Act hasn't worked, has it? It was massive overreach.
But what we're seeing is Britain in real time slip into becoming a China-style surveillance state. It started not too long ago when Apple basically withdrew their advanced data protection service, which means your iCloud services, they would no longer provide the same services they provide in America, for example, to keep those things secure, because the British government made that impossible. Then we have seen since then the Online Safety Act really start to bite, which means that if you want to access Substacks, if you want to view footage of protests at migrant hotels, if you want to look at a Guido article about how there were no babies named Keir last year, all of those things, I'm not even kidding, have been censored. And now we're seeing an assault on end-to-end encrypted messaging that's also lurking inside the Online Safety Act. And obviously the very latest thing, the geniuses in the House of Lords, as a result of the vote that just happened in the last few days, means that in order to use a VPN, which would be the last bastion of how you could have any form of anonymity in accessing the internet in this country, to be taken away from you, you're going to need photo ID. And as the guest who was just on a moment ago very eloquently put, this puts us in a category of very few countries in the world, which include countries like North Korea and China.
And, Kevin, the crazy overreach of the Online Safety Act, my own Substack, I found I couldn't get people's messages without proving my age. And this is a crackdown on freedom of speech because, as you can imagine, my Substack is about routine political events. It was possibly being rude about Keir Starmer, and suddenly you get a rule that stops people reading them.
I think the comments, the last guest in America, and the actual tone of this discussion are ludicrous. Comparing, I mean, she wasn't informed. She seemed like the USA representative of the Reform Party, to be honest. And
I don't think Reform has a branch.
Reform abroad. She's probably the chair of that. And to compare the United Kingdom with a murderous regime, Iran, to criticise the United Kingdom's the way that we look after children's health from a country where hundreds of thousands of people are murdered by gun crime every year. Nobody in this discussion
so far... She was making a different point. She was making a point about proportionality.
As a British person, to have to listen to that American woman lecture my country on child health when we're given the state that she is my point. Can I, though, go to the specifics of what no one's talking about here, which is the goals of this legislation, which is that there is a problem with what children can access online. And that is what hasn't been mentioned in this debate. It's about stopping kids getting access to harmful content, pornography, scenes of death and murder and harm. And that is what's driving all of this reform. The Labour government has no desire to stop you looking at Guido Fawkes.
Look, I can get my telephone out and I can go through my children's... My telephone,
mobile?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And I can look through the settings for my children and I can change the age-approved settings, and all these sites have age certification. I can do that as a parent. I don't need the state to do it for me. And that would apply whether they get a VPN or not, because it's on the device. There are very good workable protections. I get messages from my children regularly saying, can I have an extra half hour on Instagram or whatever it is, because there is that control.
Not every parent is decent as you.
Oh, you can't legislate on the basis that parents don't care about their children as much as the state. Then you're taking control of parenting from the individual parent and the family to give it to the remote state. That's a terrible idea.
Well, I disagree, because the state often steps in to support families where the parents are not what the children need them to be.
Most parents are concerned more about their children than anything else.
But not all.
But of course not all. No. But the state shouldn't control everybody because there are
It doesn't want to. It just
that's
wants
what
to,
it's trying to do.
It wants to protect children from pornography. It wants to create a safer online environment. And my point is that comparisons with Iran are absurd.
I agree the comparison with Iran is bonkers. But North Korea is a bit more worrying if that's the only country other than us that doesn't allow VPNs. Anyway, thank you very much to my panel. Next, we've got something really exciting because it's war. The war on the motorist reaches the A-list, this time on a scooter. The actor and activist Idris Elba was fined nearly £200 for doing a practically supersonic 28 miles an hour on a moped. Will the blob not rest until we all revert to crawling on all fours, perhaps doing the kowtow whilst we're at it?
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
The war on the motorist has reached the A-list, this time on a moped. Actor and activist Idris Elba has been fined nearly £200 and given 3 penalty points for travelling at a practically supersonic 28 miles an hour in a 20-mile-an-hour zone on a moped in central London. A speed camera caught him and he was fined, despite a clean licence and a guilty plea. Will the blob not rest until we all revert to crawling? Well, over to my panel. Kevin, this is just silly, isn't it? I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but a moped is not exactly a dangerous machine to anybody around. It may be dangerous for the rider.
Yeah.
He wasn't going very fast. This is just fanatical anti-driving stuff.
Well, I got my own notice this morning for the same offence.
On a moped? Or in a
driving.
Driving. At a low 20s speed?
No, 27 in a 20, and I'm going to have to take it on the chin.
You are, but it does... It seems to me the thing that's fundamentally wrong with it is that when the point system came in, there weren't cameras. And if you got 12 points, you were a really bad driver because you'd been stopped by a policeman 4 times to lose your licence. Yeah. Now, lots of people, hundreds of thousands every year, are losing their licence for actually driving pretty safely. And it's utterly disproportionate.
Look, I'll simply say that in London, the 20 limit can be annoying at times, but since it came in, there are fewer lives lost. And when you combine fewer lives lost with the cleaner air, you have to conclude that Sadiq Khan has done a good job in improving London's roads and air quality. I must get the wonderful London taxi drivers on to discuss that with you. But, Zia, it's an absurd policy of 20 mile an hour, except outside schools at opening and closing time. I mean, the whole of the Cromwell Road is 20 miles an hour. It is, in places, 3 lanes wide. The whole of Park Lane, which used to be a really effective thoroughfare, is 20 miles an hour. It's not actually about safety or about clean air. It's about hating the motorist.
Well, far-left activists have managed to get 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, not just in areas of London, all over London, but all over the country. I mean, look at Wales. Probably one, I mean, as the head of policy at Reform, you know, we speak to people all the time. In Wales, for example, one of the things they despise the most about recent Wales policy is this insane preponderance of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits everywhere. As you said, Jay, of course, in certain areas, outside schools, in very precise areas, of course, a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit might make sense. But that's not what this is about. This is about control. And actually, it is a war on motorists because the automobile, particularly the internal combustion engine automobile, represents everything that the far left despise. It represents freedom. It represents an inability of the state to surveil them. I want to flag, too, for people watching this programme, if you're driving a modern car, frankly, as a result of European Union legislation that has come to this country via the back door, there's an insane amount of surveillance inside your car, right? There's an enormous amount of telemetric information that is going through that maybe your insurer will have access to. That's why it sometimes feels like the car is driving you, even when you don't necessarily want that. In the end, what we need is common sense, and we need all of these progressive activists, frankly, that have captured these institutions that are, frankly, making people's lives a misery. And, you know, we talk about points and how, you know, you might have to take it on the chin. I speak to so many people who are tradespeople, whose livelihoods depend on being able to drive, who are now petrified or already have had their licenses taken away from them for basically doing nothing that any reasonable person would describe as being wrong.
And it has an economic consequence as well, because delivery vans that can only do 20 rather than 30 can do fewer deliveries. That costs money, that lowers economic growth.
Yeah, but what about, let's focus on there are fewer fatalities, aren't there?
Well,
in London, there certainly
in
are.
Bath, when they brought in 20 miles an hour, accidents went up. So the evidence on 20 miles an hour making roads safer is very mixed.
The story that we're talking about tonight is
in London,
in London, right? So I can't speak for Bath, which is near your old patch. In London, it's frustrating at times as a driver and as a lover of cars that I've got this penalty for 27 in quite a safe road. But ultimately, I think fewer lives are lost, and road safety and life trumps all these other philosophical arguments.
Then we stop driving at all. That's the problem.
Of course not.
Because you get 0 and you don't run over anybody. Anyway, I'm going to stick to my 1936 Derby Bentley because even the EU can't spy on me when I'm driving that. That's all from me. Up next, it's the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, are you going to be talking about Bentleys this evening on your programme?
Oh, no, sadly not, Jacob. We have got a convicted terrorist standing for election in Birmingham, though. A British military hero is going to slam Sir Keir Starmer. And Liz Truss joins us live in this studio at 9:20. Is she going to defect to Reform live on air?
Warm and cosy, with a chance of 0 visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. I'm back with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, there's going to be some persistent rain pushing into the southwest again later tomorrow. But before all that, there's some mist, some fog, some murkiness to watch out for tonight. That's because there's a bit of a slack flow across the country. That slack flow leading to light winds, allowing for cloud to develop and then lower, bringing some mist, some fog and some murkiness for many places, particularly through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Towards the far northeast of the country, eastern and Scotland in particular. Quite wet here, some persistent rain, even some hill snow and showery outbreaks of rain towards the southwest. Temperatures for many won't be quite as low as they were last night, but nonetheless could be a bit chilly, a touch of frost in some rural spots where we get any clear skies. Starting off tomorrow morning on a pretty damp note